Is full disclosure of misconduct in the workplace the best way to achieve justice and prevent further abuses? Faith Salie has talked to women who know the realities behind this issue all too well.
So what is the real story? Well, it's my goal with every interview, politics, legal, financial, to hold everyone's feet to the fire, because you deserve the real story.
It may feel like Gretchen Carlson's story has been told many times, just not by her.
Gretchen Carlson is suing the man who hired her and fired her from Fox News.
The former Fox News anchor's sexual harassment lawsuit helped topple the cable giant's late chairman and CEO, Roger Ailes.
The audience, they want you to be their friend, their mother, and their lover, all at the same time.
And it got the Hollywood treatment twice last year. On television, in the Showtime miniseries The Loudest Voice.
Everything works so much better when we're on the same team.
Okay, Roger. Would you like to correct yourself on that other?
And then again in the Oscar-winning film Bombshell.
What do you want out of a lawsuit? What do I want? I want this behavior to stop. Someone has to speak up. Someone has to get mad.
Did you speak to the filmmakers?
We couldn't. We were not allowed to.
Did you speak to the actors?
Nope.
Not until afterwards.
A character based on Carlson's former colleague Julie Roginsky also appears in Bombshell.
Roger.
Roginsky named Ailes in her own harassment suit, but she and Carlson both signed non-disclosure agreements, or NDAs, as part of their financial settlements. Now, both have asked to be released from those agreements.
It's $20 million.
Plus the apology.
Correct.
Whom can you talk to about what happened to you?
Nobody.
Nobody.
Well, lawyers.
Right.
Not your spouse or family?
No.
Not a therapist?
Would a therapist fall under?
I'm not even sure.
Carlson and Roginsky are two of the founders of Lift Our Voices, which advocates for laws banning the use of confidentiality agreements in sexual harassment settlements.
So even if somebody works for Coca-Cola and the secret formula is not supposed to get out?
No.
Not for toxic work issues. If somebody works for Coca-Cola, of course, they shouldn't go to Pepsi and be able to give the formula. But if somebody at Coca-Cola is harassing you, that person should be held accountable, and that person should not be able to just slip money to you quietly to make you go away.
In the wake of widespread revelations about sexual harassment that have brought down dozens of powerful men, the role of NDAs has come under heavy scrutiny. Critics say these deals, where both parties agree to keep quiet about a harassment allegation in exchange for money, can be used to protect serial offenders.
When the American public started hearing these stories, they said, that's still going on in 2016, 17, 18, 19, and 20? And why didn't we know about it?
How are you feeling this morning, Mr. Weinstein?
Harvey Weinstein was convicted just last Monday of sex crimes against 2 women. Scores more have accused the producer of sexual misconduct, but non-disclosure agreements kept many of those accusations hidden from the public for decades.
Les Moonves is stepping down in the coming hours as the head of CBS.
When CBS was investigating its former chairman and CEO, Les Moonves, the New York Times reported that a number of employees who had signed NDAs with the company were unsure if those agreements prevented them from speaking with investigators. The company assured them they wouldn't be sued for cooperating. CBS declined to comment for our story.
Mr. Mayor, are you willing to release all of those women from those non-disclosure agreements?
And as you probably know, NDAs have even become an issue in the Democratic presidential campaign.
We have a very few non-disclosure agreements.
How many is
Let me
that?
finish.
How many is that?
None of them accuse me of doing anything other than maybe they didn't like the joke I told.
Days later, candidate Michael Bloomberg said his company had identified and promised to release 3 women who'd signed NDAs pertaining to his comments.
The economic incentive to sweep bad news under the rug is a really powerful incentive.
University of Pennsylvania Law School professor David Hoffman calls these types of NDAs hush contracts.
There's 2 major ways that hush contracts can affect organizations and it can affect the world. They can make it harder for us to learn about and therefore prevent actual harassment that's going to physically harm individuals, psychologically harm individuals. The second is with respect to the victims themselves. There's a psychological harm that results from agreeing to not tell the story of your own life. And that psychological harm is not one that you'd appreciate, probably, when you first sign that contract.
In the last 2 years, several states have passed laws restricting the use of NDAs in sexual harassment settlements, with more considering similar legislation. But some argue these bans might end up hurting victims.
I think that it's very easy to be against NDAs until you actually have a real person sitting in your office who's been harmed and you're trying to help them improve the situation that they're in.
Attorney Debra Katz has represented thousands of women who've come forward with sexual harassment allegations.
Do you swear that the testimony you're
including some pretty prominent ones. She says if a company is unable to keep the details secret, it will be less likely to settle a complaint out of court, meaning victims would be forced to file a public lawsuit and might think twice about coming forward.
So take this scenario. You come forth. You report sexual harassment in the workplace. You settle your case. And some legislature says you can't do that on a confidential basis, which means every prospective employer knows you've come forward. Every person who looks at your workplace history will know that you are someone who is litigious. You're not going to be hired. And that's the problem.
Do you and your clients who are victims of harassment ever talk about, wait, if we sign this NDA, what are we doing to the people who come after me, who may then be harassed at work?
I think that's really unfair for individuals to have to carry that burden. That's not their burden. They took a job, they went to work, they were harassed in the workplace. It's not their job to be public at great personal expense to protect the next woman who comes along. That's the role and job and legal responsibility of the employer. Most people want to go on to their next job. They need that paycheck. And they probably don't want to be speaking out about their stories. And if they do, they can. They just can't enter into a non-disclosure agreement.
You will be muzzled, Gretchen.
Maybe.
When people read about this number, this settlement, Gretchen Carlson had a $20 million settlement, and a lot of people think, wow, that sounds good to me. Mm-hmm. How does that feel?
I would say that for women signing settlements and then signing an NDA, not only are they signing to be quiet, which is what the general public thinks. In the majority of the cases, you are signing to never work in your chosen profession ever again. And for that, I'm not sure what the number would be.
We'd rather be working. I mean, neither of us wanted to not be working anymore.
Oh my God, I killed myself for my career. You can understand. I killed myself to get to that point.